Hey guys, Keith from Kegland and talking today about our new pill hydrometer. This digital hydrometer will capture the gravity of your fermentation process live as you ferment and feed that up to the internet. So it's a really exciting product because it's, instead of having to pull out your hydrometer every time and fill it up and waste essentially a sample every single time you're doing that and keep an eye on it every few days, this will essentially keep an eye on that automatically and feed the data directly up to the internet. So how it works is it's got a little chip on board here, which is an accelerometer chip, similar to what you have in your mobile phone, for instance. So as your gravity in your brew changes, you'll notice that the pill will actually change in angle. So it'll start like this and go like this, for instance, and move around. And then that angle essentially can basically enable us to determine what the gravity is inside the fermenter. Now, this is a RAPT product, so you'll also be able to see the data which is collected from this device on our RAPT portal. So if you log in and create a login and ID there, you'll be able to track and see all your past brews, and they'll be collected for you. So no longer do you need to do all that record keeping to see what you've done historically. The other nice thing is it will be able to be a portal where you can access all the other RAPT products. So we already sell the RAPT fermentation chamber, really awesome product for controlling the fermentation temperature. We've also got RAPT temperature controllers coming out very soon, and also the RAPT Brewzilla Gen 4, which will also be RAPT enabled. So all these devices will feed information up to the same RAPT portal. And one of the really cool things about that is we can start to make really cool automated decisions. For instance, instead of having a fermentation profile purely based on time and temperature, we can start looking at fermentation profiles which are a little bit more clever, and they start to look at gravity change over time and then changing the temperature based on gravity. So just like a commercial brewery would do essentially. So I have to also put this disclaimer out there. We didn't invent this technology. Using an accelerometer to measure gravity was already done prior to when we came along. In fact, we used to actually stock one of the products. So there's a product here called the Tilt hydrometer, and by all means it was a good product made in America and stuff like that. There's a few slightly annoying things we didn't really love about it. Firstly, we found with the this hydrometer the fact that it was made out of polycarbonate was not really a good thing for me. Polycarbonate certainly is a heat-resistant plastic, and it's clear, and it's very robust. And it's fairly inexpensive, which is really great. But one of the problems is also the chemical resistance is not fantastic. So you'll notice some people with various chemical components, they might find that the tilt might crack after aggressive washing, for instance, with several brewing chemicals. The other thing is polycarbonate just shouldn't be used in food contact, generally speaking, which is why we've phased it out pretty much across all of our products. So polycarbonate, it needs to contain bisphenol to be made. Now, the one bisphenol that everybody knows is BPA. Now, BPA, it mimics the human hormone estrogen because it's a very, very similar molecular shape, and if it gets inside your body, it can get confused. So that's why we don't use it. It's basically just not a good idea. So there are other plastics available, but they just cost more money. So the plastics that we use are a nylon 12 on this side. We use silicone O-rings in the middle to join the two together, and then polyketone on the outside. So none of them contain any plasticizers, none of them contain any bisphenol type products. And really, they're all FDA approved and safe for food contact, which is why I've chosen to go that way. The other thing about the Tilt is it only gives out a Bluetooth signal, which also is kind of surprising that they haven't sort of developed further than this and included Wi-Fi as well. Now, Bluetooth has one advantage in the sense that it's very low energy. So you can put a battery in here, lasts a very long time. Sure, that's really great. But one of the problems is you only get a hydrometer reading if you're right next to the fermenter. So you literally have to be there with your mobile phone within Bluetooth range to get it. But if you go to work or take a holiday or do something else, you're not going to get any data. So, Tilt have another product which is a Bluetooth repeater, so you have to buy that separately, and then you'll be able to use that as essentially as a Bluetooth gateway to capture a Bluetooth beacon and then relay that up to the internet. So that was one thing I just didn't really, or two things I didn't really love about the Tilt. Now, the other thing is we've got this iSpindle. This is another sort of common open source project. The iSpindle is basically you can get all the code online and make your own. It's a bit of stuffing around because you've got to buy all the parts, and honestly, I think once you buy all the parts, I think it might even be more expensive than just buying one of the finished units from us. The other thing about the iSpindle is the threads were not really sanitary. I mean, the iSpindle was designed by some very clever people who are out there, doing this project in Germany, I believe. And you know, I suppose they didn't want to have the cost of an injection molded tool to make this, because obviously they're not selling it, it's all open source. So essentially what you've had to do is buy a preform, which is not really made for the job, but it kind of does an okay job. It has a few fissures and stuff like that, but my main problem is that the thread here is really not that sanitary, and it's kind of quite hard to sanitize. If I screw the cap on there, I've now got thread sitting in the liquid, which I don't love. Generally speaking, what we try to do is have an O-ring placement, so it's before where the thread is, so you know the liquid can't get in the unsanitary threads, I suppose. So yeah, it's not a bad device. You know, it's not perfectly optimized. I'd say the accuracy is not bad, but we did find, you know, we do get better results with a purpose-built unit where, you know, the angle changes in a very predictable fashion, while, you know, if you buy the preforms from one supplier to the next, they can vary a little bit. So, yeah, one good thing about the tilt though, or the iSpindle, sorry, is the fact that it does give out a Wi-Fi signal directly. So if you've got your, you know, Wi-Fi router inside your house, you're literally communicating directly, and you don't need the, you know, the repeater for this device to work in between the router and the tilt, for instance. So what we did is we thought, look, stuff it, if we're going to make our own unit, we should really include both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So with the pill hydrometer, basically it has Bluetooth only if you want to use that. And if you use that, the battery will literally last many years. Just like the tilt lasts years, the battery will also last years if you're just using Bluetooth only. However, that will require you to either use some type of, you know, repeater device, or if you buy one of our other RAPT products, that can also act as a repeater. So we're in the process of updating our RAPT fermentation chambers with a Bluetooth repeater function. So literally when that software update becomes available, you just download that, that'll act like a repeater, or essentially you'll be able to buy something like this. These are our new RAPT temperature controllers. So as well as just using it like a standard, you know, maybe an Inkbird temp controller, it's kind of similar in that sense, but it's also got a Bluetooth repeater function built in. The chip was not that much more expensive, so we thought, look, stuff it, we'll just include it in there, and then it can be able to do some really cool Bluetooth beacon receiving and then relaying that information onto the internet too. Anyway, let's get stuck into the nitty and gritty. Now when you first get the RAPT pill hydrometer, you'll notice we use a double O-ring design. So unlike some of the other, you know, devices like the tilt, which only have one seal, we felt it was necessary to have one level of redundancy. Because this is sitting inside the fermenter 24/7 for an extended period of time, even a very small leak in an O-ring can cause liquid to get into the board and essentially destroy the device. And we certainly had warranty claims like that with the tilt. However, with this device we have double O-rings, so if you ever take the unit apart and you see a bit of liquid halfway between one O-ring and another, that's a good indication that one of the O-rings needs to get changed over, so don't leave it any longer. It means that one has failed, you're relying on the secondary. So yeah, when you get it, it's also important to fit the battery in the correct orientation. So if you've got one of these batteries, we recommend the use of the INR 18650. Now we supply this particular type of battery because it's correctly weighted to suit all of the calibration process of this board. Now if you wanted to venture out and get your own 18650 batteries, that's fine, but you might need to go into a custom calibration process, and I'll explain that later on in the video. So when you're getting the battery, there's a positive side. You can see that denoted by a little plus symbol here usually, or the negative side, or you can notice that it's with the little nipple, I guess, on one end is the plus side, and that's the negative side, which is the flat end. And then same thing in the housing. It's pretty discreet here, but just in the battery cradle, you can see a plus there and a negative there. So making sure I've got the battery right the round way, I plug that into the board like so. The other thing is when you're putting this into the housing, you've got to make sure you face it in the correct direction. Because we've got a clear side of the housing, we want the clear side to be sitting so you can see that the light's flashing on this bit here. So I've got the lights on the bottom end of the board here, and I've got the antenna on the top end. So the lights have to go into the housing in the correct orientation, and then with the antenna going on the coloured side of the pill hydrometer like that. Then you want to screw these two parts together. Now, not a bad idea the first time you use this. I always use just a tiny bit of lube here. If you use lube on all your O-rings, they're going to last much, much longer. So I screw that together and screw this up like that. Now, one little tip I want to share with you guys is marking the two parts of the housing so you're always doing it up to the same level. Now, with these types of O-rings, it doesn't really matter if it's extremely tight or a little bit less tight because they're radial sealing O-rings, not a face seal. So it doesn't rely on this being incredibly tight, done up with it against the other part of the housing in order for the seal to get sufficient compression. So you really don't have to do it up tight. But when we were testing all of these devices, we did notice that when you only do up the cap, slightly tight or very tight, that can affect the gravity, reading and give you a little bit of an inaccurate reading if it's not done up consistently, which is the main problem. So, when you're using any of these types of hydrometers, what I recommend you do is actually mark the housing. So you've got a texter mark marking between the male and female side of the housing. So what I'm going to do is get a texter. I've already half marked this here, but I'll just continue this texter marking here. So I've got a line now on the male threaded part like that. Now what I'm going to do is do that up. Now I've put that marking on the inside of the housing because I don't really want texter to come in contact with the beer that I've got. So I'm going to screw this in like that. Now I'm going to put a very small dot on the outside of the housing, and I'm going to remove that dot with isopropyl alcohol later on, so don't have to worry about it. Unscrew the housing again like this. And now where that dot is, I'm going to put a texter mark on the inside of the housing like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe off this, this dot here with some isopropyl alcohol. Now screw the unit back up again like that. And you can see a faint line through the coloured housing. And as I'm doing this up, that line is now matching up internally in the housing with the other line on the male threaded side of the housing. So every time I do it up, if I match those two lines up, I know I'm perfectly doing the unit up to exactly the same torque every single time. So when you first get one of these RAPT pills, it's important that you calibrate the battery to the board, essentially so you can get an accurate percentage battery reading throughout the life of the device. So when you first get it, make sure to charge it 100% full. Leave it on charge for a good 24 hours. It's really important for the battery calibration process. Once we've done that, what we can do is disconnect the cable here. So this has already been on for a while. And you'll see that I've got the flashing light down here indicating that I'm in AP mode. So AP mode is when the pill board here is essentially giving out its own Wi-Fi signal. So what I can do is connect the phone to the Wi-Fi signal that this pill is putting out, and I use that signal to calibration on the device, to connect to the Wi-Fi network, and just change configuration details and go into diagnostics. So to connect to this board's Wi-Fi connection, what I do is go on the phone and I'll see a device suspiciously. The SSID will look like it's this device. So in this instance, it's Kegland RAPT Hydrometer or RAPT pill, depending on the firmware version you're using. So I go in this, and the phone now is essentially looking at the server putting out by this device. So I'm on the AP here, and I want to connect it to Squanch's network, for instance. So I'm going to click on that and paste that password in. So Squanch's network is the network that I've got locally in the office here, just which I set up temporarily for this demo. And what I do is join the network, and now this device here will be connecting to my Wi-Fi router directly. So that's pretty much it for the Wi-Fi setup. Alright, so now I've got the RAPT pill registered on my Wi-Fi network. The next thing I want to do is actually register the pill itself with my login from the RAPT portal. Now most of you guys will be using a mobile phone and probably a web browser or something like that, or you could just be using everything on the mobile phone if you wanted to. What I've got here is a panel on the right hand side. So most of you guys will see this in your mobile phone, so I hope you don't get too confused with that. This is, pretend this side on the right is the mobile phone screen, and you can see you can also access the device using the IP address. So if you know what the IP address is, like for instance in the diagnostics here, you can actually use a web browser to set this up as well. But anyway, yeah, so what I want to do is bring that up in one screen, and then also bring up the app.rapt.io webpage. So that's app.rapt.io, and then I want to log in. So obviously if you haven't made a login, you'll have to register first or sign up essentially down here. You can also log in with Google or Facebook, but yeah, if you've already created a login with the email and password, then you won't be able to go back to this because the email address will already be associated with a particular password. But anyway, I'm just going to log in like so.
Now the registration for all the RAPT devices, whether it's the RAPT pill, the RAPT New Gen for Brewzilla, or the RAPT fermentation chamber, they're all pretty much the same. What you'll need to do is go into the top left-hand corner and click the RAPT pill, because I'm registering a pill. Then click next here. Now on the actual AP, so this is the access point or the web page, which is essentially being served by the pill itself. I'll go into registration over here. Now, when you go into registration, it'll tell you its MAC address and also the user code here. So that unique code here is going to change every time you deregister and register the device or restart the device and so forth. So what I do is put in my MAC address and then put in my validation code. Now, once I do that, I hit next, and this will register essentially to my RAPT profile. Now, I actually don't really want to register this one. I've already got multiple registered, so I'm not going to hit next in my situation, but yeah, you can sort of get what I mean. Once that's registered, it'll come up on here. Now, I've been doing a lot of testing with this one. It's called Keys Good Medicine BF94. I've just actually nicknamed it BF94 because that's the last 4 digits of the MAC address. But as you can see, it's giving me some information on the gravity and also the temperature, but I've been chucking this in various jugs of water and so forth. Now, at the end of the graph here, you can see what the current temperature and hydrometer reading is down the bottom here. I should say we're actively doing a lot of work on the back end here, so you'll probably see soon we're going to update to different graph types and stuff like that as well. So, or if you've got any particular requests on the back end that you want us to change, please just send us an email and let us know, because you know, while we're doing lots and lots of updates and stuff like that, we want to take all your advice into consideration. Anyway, look, that's how to register the device with your actual user ID on the RAPT portal. The next thing you want to do is do the calibration process. So with calibration, what you want to do is go back to the screen itself. So I can probably just disregard this left-hand panel here and click on the calibration button. So it's still in AP mode, as you can see. When I've unplugged the pill from the charging plug, so the Type-C charger, it'll stay in AP mode for about 10 minutes. If the AP mode turns off and you can no longer see this page on your phone, you'll have to plug it back into power to get it back into AP mode. Anyway, once I've done that, you can see in the calibration, there's standard, advanced, and custom calibration. So for most of you guys who just want sort of general use and pretty good accuracy, the standard calibration is perfectly acceptable. So what I'm going to do is hit yes to standard calibration. Now what I have to do is drop the pill into a jug of water. Now I've got a jug of water on my desk, which the pill's sitting into right now. And I'm going to keep an eye on this, and you can see that it's now just got this reading here, the 34, 36. It's still moving around a little bit, like it's bobbing up and down in the water. Normally what you would do is wait for this number to stabilize somewhat. And once you know this angle has stabilized and it's not accelerating in any particular direction, hit the calibrate button, and then what will happen is the progress will basically go from 0 to 100%. So as you can see, it doesn't take too long. It's just basically feeding the information back up and writing this change to the actual board itself and saving it in the firmware. Now, if you want a more complex calibration, you can go into advanced calibration mode. So if I click on this, you'll see, now, look, it's not absolutely necessary advanced calibration, I should say. For most people, it's going to give you quite accurate readings anyway. So, look, only go into this if you really can be bothered, but click on yes to go into advanced. Now, what it's going to do is essentially do the same process, but now it's going to do it twice. So I've still got the pill sitting in a jug of water, as you can see here. So the jug of water, because it's, I know that jug of water is just tap water, so the gravity is 1.000, and the angle there is just starting to stabilize. It's pretty much stable. It's varying by just a couple of points there now. So look, I'm just going to hit calibrate now. And then it will take you into a second step, or a 2-point calibration. So what you want to do on the second point of calibration is put the pill into another jug, or a jug of water, or something mixed with sugar, to basically increase the gravity. Now you can use actual beer wort as well. So if you've got a batch of beer ready to go and you know what the gravity of that beer is, for instance, you may have checked it with a hydrometer or something like that, you'll be able to key in this number here. So I believe I've got this jug here sitting with a mixture of sugar and water on my desk, and I think it is 1.050. I think it is. I'm not 100% sure. I've probably got to check that again. But look, for the sake of the demonstration, I've got it sitting in there. And once again, now the angle is sitting at 73.21, and it's kind of stabilizing. Look, it's bobbing up ever so slightly in the liquid there. And then I hit calibrate. So that's a 2-point calibration. Now, when you're doing 2-point calibration, we definitely recommend using water as 1 point. And then the second point here, we'd recommend using a fairly, normal gravity that you would use for whatever it is you're fermenting out. So, if I'm generally doing beers of 1050, I'd put in 1050 solution to do these 2-point calibration. Now, if you guys want to get really complex and really into calibration, then you can go into custom calibration. I'll just click on this. Look, I'll clear those settings again. Now, this has a big, long formula. Now, we've got a sheet on the website which explains this formula in a bit more detail. Now, this calibration method is really only for the more technically minded people. Now, as you can see, by default, it's sort of got a 5-order polynomial in here. So look, this gets, essentially what you're doing in this process is you're plotting a whole bunch of points. So instead of like the advanced calibration mode, which is 2 points, in this calibration mode, you can put as many points as you want. You can put in 100 points if you want to. So you can sit there all day moving the pill from, one solution to the next and plot an entirely new graph, and then essentially use one of our sheets that will be available online to create this 5th order polynomial, and then copy and paste that 5th order polynomial into this section of the website, and then hit calibrate. So this is by far the most accurate, but there's not many reasons why you're going to need to do this. There may be some instances where, for instance, let's say you've changed the battery. So we sell our battery, which is a particular brand, the INR 18650 battery. If you use a different brand of battery, maybe you might consider it worthwhile to do this. Or if potentially you're doing extremely high gravity product which is outside our normal range, then yeah, you can go through this process. Thirdly, if you do anything to change the weight of the device, so let's say you open up the device and then move the weights or change the weights that are on the top and bottom of the device, you can essentially, you can create a whole new different device which is suitable for different gravities essentially by going through this process. But 99% of customers will not need to use this very complex level of calibration.
Okay, so I've got the RAPT pill sitting in some sanitizer solution here. Obviously got sanitizer all over my hands as well, so they're all sanitized. And I'm going to pop the lid on this fermenter. Now, the reason why this fermenter is clear is because I'm actually doing our new Brewcariotes D'Excelsior recipe kit, which we're just about to put up on the website. So hopefully we can have a look at that one a bit later if you're interested in that. Just for a change, thought I might do a seltzer instead of doing beer every single video. And then I've got the yeast and nutrient mix in here for this particular kit as well. So I'm going to chuck that one in, and away we go. So I dropped the lid on that one. And another thing to note at this point is what I've done with this particular pill hydrometer when I'm in the RAPT portal is I've actually paired the RAPT portal with this particular RAPT fridge, and I've got the seltzer profile which I'm running on this one. So because I've paired the pill with this RAPT fermentation chamber, that means the data for the pill will come up and then overlay on top of the fridge temperature data on the portal. So that's a really nice thing if you can be bothered just going that extra step. If you pair the two of them together, you get really, really great visuals of how the whole fermentation process is going. Now you might have multiple of the pill hydrometers, so you don't get them easily confused. We've also got a number of different coloured housings, so you guys might want to, have one green one which you use with a particular fermentation chamber or fermenter, and you might use another red one or something like that for another one. So that way you can visually see the difference between them all, and then have multiple fermentations going at the same time. Thanks for that, guys. If you want to hear about any other cool stuff that's coming out, definitely subscribe to this YouTube channel down bottom right hand corner. Hit subscribe now and you'll be the first one to hear about any new product releases at all. The other thing you want to do is jump online, go to Facebook and sign up to our Facebook Homebrew community group. It's a great community group with lots of other people just like yourself sharing tips and tricks on how to get the most out of the gear. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.